Christopher Nolan's Odyssey finally hit theaters, and like expected, it's being met with rave reviews and praise for being the greatest thing since sliced bread. But this film has had major issues and continues to have major issues. From the beginning, it was met with controversial casting, story changes that weren't necessary, and completely disrespecting and making a mockery of a real era with mythological references and historical attire. And the reason this is such a big problem is because the success of this film just gives Hollywood the impression they can do whatever they want, even if that means undermining and disrespecting a culture, historical places, and ancient literature. The Odyssey isn't fictional. It's historical and mythological, not just some fantasy made up. Christopher Nolan's Odyssey, on the other hand, is a disrespectful adaptation to Homer's epic poem. The Odyssey is supposed to be a story of a hero's journey. You could say it's the hero's journey. It shaped literature by including topics of loss, grief, ego, redemption, and war. But Christopher Nolan's version is not that. It's not about a hero learning from his mistakes. It does exactly what Emily Wilson's translation did, which is deconstruct what is supposed to be a heroic male character and, in her words, tells you about a complicated man. Both her translation and Nolan's movies are filled with theatrics.
Taste for the theatrical, like you, leaves a calling card.
I'll look into it.
It's a deconstruction of what's supposed to be the definitive coming home story, while taking the hero and making him sad, depressed, and forgetting who he is, and not a man doing whatever it takes to get back to his family with an unbreakable spirit. It also changes fundamental things about the story that change it from the Odyssey into something else completely. From the beginning, the film starts with Travis Scott essentially doing slam poetry to the suitors in Odysseus' palace, which completely lacks character and identity of a kingdom, while also speaking in modern dialogue, making you feel like you're watching the slam poetry scene from 22 Jump Street.
Slam poetry, yelling, angry, waving my hands a lot, specific point of view on things, Cynthia,
And then immediately fades into Sinon being left behind, who notices the Trojans riding on horseback towards them, and starts that goofy-ass run I'm sure most of you have seen being memed, and then immediately gets killed. Mind you, this is a character that Odysseus says later in the movie is the best warrior he's ever fought with. And to be honest with you, it feels like the character was strategically named Sinon because they knew if they made it Achilles, they would be met with significant backlash. Because the character takes the place of Achilles in every significant scene he would have been in, especially the one at Hades. And Lupita Nyong'o's character, the one that started a lot of this controversy in the first place, is barely in the movie. She's in the film for less than 10 minutes with both of her characters combined, which just makes it feel like it was not a casting for ability or for the significance of the character, and it was strictly a decision made to check a box to be able to have the movie meet Oscar requirements.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spent?
And it's interesting that the comment, why doesn't Homer spend more time with the female characters, was even made in the first place. Because after watching the film, I would argue Nolan spends less time with these characters than Homer did. Athena, who is the main person that guides Odysseus home, played by Zendaya, has little to no lines, and just gives her signature gaze at Matt Damon's character almost the entire movie. And Anne Hathaway, who plays Penelope, has a scene where she's yelling at Tom Holland that she's been without a husband for 20 years, knows the entire inner workings of the kingdom, but she's not a man, so she can't sit on the throne, even though she's fully capable of doing so. She even says she's been practically running the kingdom the entire time Odysseus has been gone, but the thing is, Nolan doesn't have her do anything to show she's capable of those things. He just has her sit behind a weaved door knitting the entire movie. And that would have been a perfect opportunity to show her working with the people, helping around the kingdom, engaging with more of the suitors, which she doesn't do other than with Robert Pattinson. You could have shown her making decisions for the kingdom, which would have made her yelling at Tom Holland's character hold more weight. But none of those things happen. So I just find it interesting that a major talking point was the amount of time Homer spends with the female characters, when it feels like Nolan spends even less time with them, which is most likely caused because the movie's horrible pacing and terrible editing. The whole film is told out of order like the original poem, but it feels edited in a way that is trying to seem more intelligent and smarter than it actually is, which in turn makes it more confusing than it has to be. But it's essentially a one-on-one therapy session with Calypso and Odysseus trying to remember who he is and how he ended up on her island. Because he forgot who he is because she's been feeding him the lotus flower, which is not the way that sequence is written in Homer's Odyssey, and it's not until she decides she wants him to start remembering she stops feeding him the flower. And I think that's one of the things that bothers me so much about this movie, is it's all over the place. You don't really feel like you're with Odysseus on his journey from the beginning to end. It's just a bunch of flashback sequences of him remembering the journey, scrambled in between the battle at Troy, that cuts to a sequence with Tom Holland, that cuts to Odysseus meeting Circe, which cuts to a sequence of them sailing and being in a storm that then cuts to another sequence of Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway. I mean, it's all over the place, and it really ruins the cohesion and flow of the story. And this movie is supposed to be Odysseus' journey back home, but the sequences of them being on the islands feel rushed and small. Even though the movie is 3 hours long, they left key memorable moments out that are iconic parts of the original story. For example, a very memorable moment when they get trapped in Cyclops' cave is completely left out. That being the nobody sequence. It's not even mentioned or used in this film. Now don't get me wrong, Christopher Nolan's sequence is great. It uses practical effects, it makes you feel like you're in an environment, and gives a great horror aspect. But it loses the personality of the original story, which is Odysseus being a quick thinker and intelligent over brute strength. It completely leaves out that sequence, and if you're unfamiliar with it, that is one of the most memorable and iconic moments of the story. And who better to explain it to you than Kevin Conroy's Batman?
He's a nobody.
Ever read the Odyssey? After Odysseus was caught by the Cyclops, he told it his name was Nobody. So when he poked its eye out and its friends asked who did it, all the Cyclops could say was, nobody.
Point taken.
A pivotal scene like that left out of the movie, one of the many story changes this film is filled with. Another very big problem is the modern dialogue. It really does not work. It completely takes you out of the experience, and that's because they're so worried about making this for the modern audience.
Cynthia!
Not having that traditional dialogue hurts the believability of the movie, and I personally feel that Tom Holland's performance would have been even stronger if he was able to use his natural accent, because I feel that he comes off a little stiff using his American one in some scenes, and not only that, it's just disrespectful to the original literature and the time period. It comes off as somewhat demeaning by not even trying to keep the essence of the original story, while also undermining Greek culture, armor, and mythology along with Homer's work, which is huge and has been an influence in schools and English literature for generations. And I know this will probably be an unpopular opinion, but I honestly was not impressed with the visuals. Now don't get me wrong, Nolan makes visually stunning films. A prime example of that is Interstellar or Dunkirk, or how he gave the Narrows and Batman Begins so much character, by creating miniatures and making the city feel real and alive. Or sequences in Inception, there's no doubt that he is a fantastic filmmaker. But it just felt that this movie suffered from empty set pieces and not being creative with cinematography. When I saw Fortnite almost recreate the trailer one for one, it made me have those feelings even more. Along with the fact that they took all the color out of the world, not making it feel like the Greek spectacle it could have been was a poor creative decision. And I recently rewatched Troy after seeing the Odyssey, and I couldn't believe how beautiful that movie is. Especially when it comes to the beaches of soldiers, or looking over Troy, it's actually visually stunning. It's so good to the point where you can't tell if it's CGI or not. Even the 1954 film called Ulysses feels more alive than Nolan's. But at the end of the day, the bigger picture is this movie isn't the Odyssey. It's a fantastic movie, but not Homer's Odyssey. It disrespects Homer's Odyssey with story changes, modern dialogue, bad pacing, and disrespectful casting. That makes it feel like a shell of what it should be. And like I said in my last video, it shouldn't have been called The Odyssey, because that's not what it is. It's a good movie, but not the epic that Homer wrote about, or the one that I think he would be happy with if he saw. And yes, the movie will do good. I'm not saying it's going to flop. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm saying it's just not what it says it is. And that's the problem, is taking something great and making it into a deconstruction of the hero's journey, and taking advantage of a known story, and basing it around a complicated man and using the most controversial translation. But it's the bigger problem with Hollywood, which is selective inclusion when it matters for awards and praise. It doesn't matter if you don't respect the historical or original story, because the film will do great and win every award. And I wouldn't be surprised if the casting director wins an Oscar for this movie, considering that's a new category at the Oscars, and how diverse the cast is. But Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is an overhyped, visually appealing, but disrespectful adaptation of a story that has been around for 3,000 years. And it probably won't be the last time it's remade. But what did you think of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey? Did you love it or hate it? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.